All right, it's 10:20. Means it's 4:20 somewhere. So if you got one, spark up. All right. If you watched my Dax Apocalypse video, some of what I'm gonna say will be repeated. However, if you haven't, this is my take on what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. As far as on the ground goes, there is propaganda coming out from all sides. I have no idea what's going on the ground. Neither do most people who are making the claim. I mean, between people posting old pictures, old videos, videos from other countries, like the propaganda machine is it's in full motion. So I'm not going to talk about what's going on the ground, because I have no way to verify what is legit and what is not. So we're going to talk about how we got here, motives behind things, causes, effects, all that fun stuff. I have been called a Putin apologist now. I lost track of how many times on Twitter. Never once have I said I support Russia or Putin or their invasion. I simply say, one, not my business. I don't have a dog in the fight. Two, not America's business. Three, America has no moral high ground to stand on. We are still occupying several countries we've illegally invaded under false pretenses. One of them being Iraq. Even though the democracy that we gave them, that they didn't ask for, but we gave it to them, voted for us to get the fuck out, we stayed. I was one of my, foreign policy was a area where, Trump didn't start no new wars. Some of his actions could have, in particular, assassinating Soleimani. That could have had repercussions. That could have led to a big war. However, he didn't get us out of the ones we were in. He was in power when Iraq voted for us to get the fuck out. Because they understood that, any war between Iran and the U.S. would likely be fought in Iraq. That's how things were shaping up. They wanted no parts of that, so they voted for everyone to get the fuck out. We stayed. So the idea that we care about another nation's sovereignty is laughable. Then let's not forget, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Somalia. We overthrew the government in Iran back in 1952. Just like, even Ukraine. We backed the coup in 2014. John McCain was out there for it. I forgot which other politician. We funded helped arm and fund the Azov Battalion, which is a Nazi unit. A little in actual neo-Nazis, not just someone who disagrees with Democrats or progressives. Real Nazis. They wear the fucking patches. They out there doing they fucking little Nazi fucking bullshit. Now, that is not to say that the entire government and the entirety of Ukraine is full of Nazis. You know, that when you bring up the Nazis, that's what everyone, they always try to go to that hard. Oh, so all the Ukrainians are Nazis. No. Like, come on. People lost their ability to have nuance. They have their stand, their opinion, and they're gonna die on that fucking hill, and there's nothing you can tell them that will even make them fucking sit there and think like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But there are Nazis operating in the Ukraine. NBC fucked up and had a video of them training local civilians, on how to fight back. And they have been terrorizing the Donbass region for, 8 years now? Since 2014. They've been out there fighting with the harassing and shooting that and killing, because Ukraine is not, much like the divided states of America, there is a divide. On the eastern part of Ukraine, there are Ukrainians who speak Russian. They favor Russia because at one point Ukraine was part of Russia. Kiev at one point was Russia's capital. So there is a lot of history. We're not going to get into all of that because, yeah, it's relevant, but it's not relevant to exactly what brought us here. So yes, they do exist. They do not account for the entirety of the Ukraine fighting forces. I don't know how much there is. Our government hasn't. They were trying to keep the lid on lid closed on the fact that they were arming Nazis, but can of worms opened. So yeah. In that first year of fighting, there was a treaty signed, the Minsk Accords or the Minsk something. I've heard it called several things. The Minsk Agreements, the Minsk Accords, Minsk Treaty, whatever it is. It was signed in Belarus. And it was supposed to, basically let that region of the country kind of operate semi-independently. And it was supposed to also include a ceasefire. The Azov Battalion, they didn't, get the memo about the ceasefire. They've been still out there going and fighting those separatists. And the Ukrainian government did nothing to stop them. So they weren't holding up their end of an agreement that they signed on to. And, that opened the door for Putin to come in and be like, oh, well, these people over here who you're doing nothing to protect from these Nazis, well, they've asked us for help. I recognize them as their, own independent states. And, well, move some troops in, and then a couple days later, full-scale invasion. Now, if something happened in that first few days where they, like a Russian troops got hit or something, I do not know. But it's also quite possible that, the full-scale invasion was pre-planned, and we'll get more into that in just a second. Now, why did the U.S. back a coup? Because the people elected a government that was neutral, but leaning a little more on the Russian side. More favorable to Russia, the people they share a border with. And a history with, and half their country shares a language with, and yada yada yada. And a neutral Ukraine is actually the best thing for peace. And our government, high-ranking officials in our government have known this for decades. Like Ukraine, it's Russia's red flag. If we try to make them a part of NATO and think we're gonna put our offensive weapons that close to their fucking capital and their border, that's a red flag. Our government has known this for decades. I've heard someone saying it as early as 98. A video of someone saying this. Like, if we, go here, that's like, expect bad things. Now, as a result of us backing the coup and putting in someone who was far from neutral and was, essentially a puppet for NATO, that is when Russia decided, we're going to go in and we're going to take Crimea, because that's their only warm water port access. So strategically, that makes a lot of sense. That's your only warm water port access. You're about to lose that if Ukraine goes full blown. Yeah, we're gonna be a part of NATO, or we're gonna be, NATO's little puppet state. They would have lost that access, which is why that happened. Was it right? Am I saying it's justified? No. Supposedly there was a vote. I don't know the legitimacy of that vote. Probably wasn't legitimate, but I can't prove either way. And but again, it was a reaction to our action. Had we not backed the coup and inserted a puppet, the likelihood of Crimea being taken, slim to none. This was 2014. Now, again, I'm not saying it's justified or right, just saying, we were in the wrong first, then they were in the wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. But strategically for Russia, that was the right thing to do. And we didn't like it, but hey, it is what it is. And then there was still the other region. Then the Orange Man got in the office. Now, Putin didn't make an attempt on Ukraine, and Trump sent arms to Ukraine, many of which ended up in the hands of the Azov Battalion, because they were the ones on the front lines. It was a proxy war, essentially, that's been going on. But then when Biden got elected, and then there was also Trump sanctioned the Nord Stream 2, which we're going to hit the gas angle. We're going to hit that in a minute as well, because there's a lot to cover. Where was I? Trump sanctioned the Nord Stream 2. Biden gets in the office. As soon as Biden gets in the office, Zelensky pretty much shut down all the media outlets within the country that were, coming out of the region who sides with Russia. So much for democracy. This was a gift to Biden. So that was his action. And Putin's reaction was to start moving troops to the border. Again, everything has been action, reaction. I'm not saying the reaction is right, but the reaction, we knew what the reaction would be. You know, when you know what, like, look, we're gonna do this, they're gonna do something because because we know what would happen if Russia tried putting weapons that close to our border. Let us not forget, we don't have to make any type of hypotheticals because we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. Russia put nukes there. America said, no, 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 no. No, they got to go. Yeah, so we don't have to make up hypotheticals of, well, what if China put nukes in Mexico? No, we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. We already know how we would react. We would not be cool with it. But now we're expecting them to be cool with us doing it. Something the U.S. has been doing throughout this whole thing has been throwing bricks from a glass mansion. And I say mansion because things Russia has done with Ukraine, we have done to so many more countries that the amount you know, like Iraq, Syria, Libya, Afghanistan, Somalia. We have decimated countries. So for us to have the audacity to be like, oh, this complete disregard for international law and a violation of Ukraine's sovereignty, is horseshit. And he was even able to use, our playbook for a few of those invasions. Oh, you know what? They got Al Qaeda in their country. We got to go get them. Switch Al Qaeda with Nazis. That's what they got, Nazis in their country. We got to go get them. That's what Putin did. So like I said, the American government acting appalled. No, they've been wanting this. So that happened. And then, at that point is also when he probably said, you know what? It's either now or never because this is not going to end well. So he probably drew up the plans then started drawing up the plans for a full-scale invasion. Then Biden lifted the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 with a condition for Germany that if Putin were to invade Ukraine, the sanctions go back into play. Now, why is this important? The Nord Stream 1 goes through Ukraine. Ukraine gets a cut off of everything that goes through. And that supplies Europe with 30 to 40% of their natural gas. The Nord Stream 2 was going to go through the ocean, or not the ocean, the Baltic. And it was going to cut out Ukraine, cutting the costs, and it would have had Russia. Supplying Germany and Europe with 80% of their natural gas. Which energy costs, if you think they're getting bad here, they're even worse in Europe because our actions with Russia are making them have to pay a lot more with us, which is what most of this is really about. Because if Russia would have been, supplying them with that much of their gas, they're very dependent on Russia and less dependent on us, which means Europe would no longer be our puppet when we want to go invade a country, like, that's allied with Russia, you think Europe's going to risk having their gas turned off? 80% of their gas turned off? Nah. They're not going to support some. They're going to want to see, they're going to start asking questions. Well, do we have evidence for why? And things that didn't happen in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2011, 2007, the last 20 fucking years. So that's what a lot of this is about. That gas to Europe. That's what Syria is about. We wanted to run a pipeline through Syria. But Assad wouldn't let it go through because, well, they're allied with Russia. It would hurt Russia. So that is the motive of the U.S. to antagonize Russia and use the people of Ukraine as cannon fodder to pretty much, because for some reason we're trying to sell Europe stuff instead of just, supplying us ourselves here at a cheaper cost than what we're paying right now. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's about oil and gas. That's why everything is about to start getting more expensive. So I highly recommend buying food, water, stock up on what you can now while it's cheap. Because all these sanctions that Biden has put on Russia, that's going to cut off that 30%. We also get gas in from Russia. But Europe, they're not going to be getting all the gas and oil that was coming out of Russia will no longer be. And that's going to create a higher demand. Biden kind of pissed off the crown prince or the king of Saudi Arabia. I've lost track of who's in charge over there. Pissed him off at a climate summit, blaming Saudi Arabia as a big problem when it comes to climate change. So when he picks up the phone to call them and be like, hey, we need you to increase production so that we can get some of these costs down, they kind of hit him with the fuck off. So, yeah, what's about to happen at the pumps, gas here went up 20 cents like overnight. And it's about to go up again. So, yeah, there is a lot of factors that are going into it. A lot of which are kind of on the shoulders of Biden. Because like you said, in most cases, Saudi Arabia would be like, yeah, all right, we'll increase production, help y'all get the prices down, because they'd be able to sell a whole bunch still, so they still make the money. But they felt disrespected, so they're not gonna do that. Then there was Biden shutting down a pipeline, which impacts prices because speculators will sit there and be like, okay, we gotta see what's going on. So they're starting to buy up a whole lot, which is increasing the demand, which is increasing the price. And then now this. Then there's a lot of wheat that also comes out of, I learned over the last few days that a lot of wheat comes out of Ukraine and Russia. It goes to the Middle East and Africa. So a lot of those countries that depend on that food, like, some countries it's as high as like 30-40% of their wheat comes from there. yeah, we're gonna see food shortages. It's it's gonna have impacts around the globe, which is why I have the stance of we've done enough. Stop arming, stop sending them aid, let the shit fucking play out. Hopefully it ends really fucking quick with minimal fucking casualties. And we figure it out from there. Like, we've already done enough. You know, like I said, yeah, a lot of the blood is on Putin's hands, but not all of it. Blood on the U.S. government's hands and on the Ukrainian government's hands. You know, it's the poor working folks who are going out there and doing the dying. You know, I also learned. I've heard it from I've seen a few stories on it, but again, I don't always believe all the stories. However, then someone doing a live stream from Ukraine, apparently some of the people who Zelensky passed out rifles to were, how you say, criminals. So apparently they've been having problems with robberies, shootings, and lootings. And like basically some of the gangs got a hold of some of those rifles. And yeah, causing problems in Kiev. But yeah, so that's, again, I don't support Putin. I don't approve of what he's doing. I understand why he's doing it. You know, we're cornering them, pushing them into a corner. You know, back at, you know, but again, it's working people who will die over this, not the politicians who wage the wars. So yeah, that is why, like I said, we gotta make sure we don't end up getting further involved than we already are. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have a good source for information for what is coming from over there, please leave that in the comments. I would love to find a good source for information. Other than that, though, y'all have a nice night. Thanks for watching. Stay blazing and be prepared.